Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the Executive Subcommittee of Learning and Families of the Monday 20th of March 2023. Please use the chat function, generally speaking, but if you're in the chamber, because my chat function was really slow the last time, I'm also happy to be waved at if that's appropriate. But nice to see everybody here, and particularly our fine array of talent there in the second row. Thank you very much for coming. I know you're all busy, and to the elected members as well. Have we any apologies or substitutes, Danny, please?
Yes, thank you, convener. We have a substitution. We've got Bailey Ahern here. He's substituting for Councillor Kigali, who submitted his apologies for today's meeting.
Thank you, Danny. Welcome, Bailey Ahern. Any declarations of interest from elected members, please? Not at all. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 3, which is the meeting, the minute of the meeting of the Executive Subcommittee of Learning and Families, 29th August 2022. Can we agree that minute, please? Question from Councillor Shires.
Thank you, convener. We're welcomed having the care inspectorate, wasn't it, at the last meeting, and just wondered if there was any update on Education Scotland coming to the committee. We've been asking for quite a long time.
Danny. That's okay. Sharon, I think you're trying to say something there. Response.
Yeah, Shires, we have Education Scotland coming this afternoon. In fact, Pamela Adamson is about to do a presentation for us this afternoon. Thank you.
I was thinking that we were away to do that. I was doubting myself given your question, so thank you, Sharon, for yes. No, I think we're away to do just exactly what you've asked for, but thank you, Sharon. I was doubting myself that we were speaking about the same thing there just for a minute. So with no further ado, if we can formally agree the minute, please.
Agreed.
Thanks very much, Councillor Barrett. We will move on to Pam Anderson from Education Scotland's presentation. Please, Pam, if you're here, very welcome.
Thank you very much. I am. I don't know if you can see me.
We can, yes. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you very much for having me. I'll apologise now. I've got a bit of a croaky throat today, but I'm armed with water, so hopefully that would be okay. So it's my pleasure to be with you, albeit virtually this afternoon. And when I met with Sheena and Sharon, they had asked me to do a little bit of an overview for you about approaches to inspection. So could I have the next slide, please? Magna, thank you, Magna. So what I'd hope to do is give you just an oversight of the principles and purposes of inspection and review, some of the key features of inspection, the partnership working that we undertake, not just with Person and Kinross, but with all local authorities, and oversight of the post-pandemic Person Kinross inspections. Thank you, Magda. So the purpose of inspection, we've got 3 key aims, and that's to provide assurance and public accountability, to promote improvement, and to inform the development of education and policy and practice. Thank you. And here you'll see an overview of the principles of inspection and review. And I can see that there's quite a lot of information on this slide, so I'm going to talk to it a wee bit. First and foremost, it's about that independence and impartiality and accountability that we have through our role as HM inspectors. And we really want to be able to support schools and settings to improve, to support their improvement and to build capacity. So in every inspection, the starting point is always the school's own self-evaluation, and local authority staff may well be involved in discussing that on an ongoing basis with schools. But for every inspection, head teachers and managers are invited to provide us with an up-to-date self-evaluation. How How's things going in the school? How do they know? And what are they going to do next? And every inspection will start with a discussion, looking at that paper and talking in more depth about it. Another key aspect of our inspections is the fact that we actually do things in person. We do things face to face. One of the things that happened during the pandemic was a lot of work directly with schools online, and that was very helpful. But there's nothing better than to get in and get the feel of a school when you're in the building. There's some aspects of that we have maintained that we found was really helpful. So in advance of an inspection, for example, the head teachers and the managing inspectors will be meeting via Teams rather than just previously what had been a phone call. And that's where the relationship building really starts, and that co-constructing of that inspection visit. We're very transparent, and it's about that mutual trust as well in terms of inspection. We are clear about what we're there to do. We explain the process with staff within schools, and we're very much respectful of the fact that it's their school, they know it best, and we're there to find out about it and from them when we are there. We also work in partnership with the users of the services and other providers and other scrutiny bodies. So, for example, we do conduct inspections with the Care Inspectorate. And we're also proportionate and responsive, and we assess the risk for inspections. Local authorities officers do get advance notice of an inspection, and if there is a particular risk for us visiting a school at that particular time, they'll have a conversation with us about that, and we can take that into account. So again, it's that partnership working, that transparency and that mutual respect. We're also minded about best value and also about that equality and diversity aspect of our work. We really actively promote equality and diversity through that. But perhaps most importantly, there's that big green square in the middle. It's all about learners and the users of the education facilities that we visit, and they're at the heart of everything we do. When we go to visit a school, it's very much, it's what is it like to be a learner in this school, and that is of prime importance to us. Thank you, Magda. So in terms of the number of inspections that we do, since we have returned to inspection post-pandemic, we continue to inspect 150 inspections of early learning and childcare settings and 250 school inspections, and 120 of those school inspections contribute evidence to the National Improvement Framework, and over a 3-year period that provides a statistical evidence for the impact of the National Improvement Framework. And those 120 will be what we call a full model inspections. That's where we're there for a full week. And the other inspections are a short model inspection, which would be 2 or 3 days, depending if it's primary or secondary. Thank you, Magda. We've also been mindful of the fact that there has been concern about the over-inspection of early learning and childcare settings. So what we have done is extend the period of time between the Care Inspectorate and Education Scotland inspections to 18 months. So now when we notify schools and settings of their, or schools with a nursery class rather, that they are to be inspected, if they have been inspected between within that 18 months, we say we're assuming that you're not wanting your nursery class to be inspected at this time, but you have the option to ask for it to be inspected. So local authority officers and head teachers will discuss whether they want that to be the case. In most cases, I would say at the moment, we're finding that they choose not to have their nursery inspected, but that's not the case for all of them. all of them, but they do have that option. Okay, thank you, Magda. I mentioned the full and the short models. We were very mindful that we'd had paused our inspections during the pandemic, and what we wanted to do was keep as much familiar to teachers and schools as possible. And one of the most familiar things to schools are their approaches to self-evaluation, and in particular these quality indicators. And you'll see here that for the full model, we would evaluate the leadership of change, learning, teaching and assessment, ensuring wellbeing, quality and inclusion, and raising attainment and achieving, or in nurseries, that would be securing children's progress. But we also have a look at aspects of the quality indicator 2.2 about the curriculum. We'll look at learning pathways, and we'll also look about partnership with parents. On a short model, we will look specifically at learning, teaching and assessment and raising attainment and achievement. And we don't do the additional themes or the other two QIs. Before the pandemic, we also, did you go back a slide a wee minute? Thank you. Before the pandemic, we also gave schools an option to have a choice quality indicator, something that they felt they were really proud of and they wanted to have validated, or something that they were maybe doing some work about and really wanted us to have some insight in and to point them in the right direction or help them with that. To allow us to have more time to talk about the impact of the pandemic, since we've resumed inspections, then we've no longer asked for that choice QI, and that's given us a bit more flexibility of the time when we're actually in the school to enable us to have those conversations. Thank you, Magda. We also do thematic reviews and inspections, and this year we're looking at bullying, we're looking at curriculum design, and we're looking at early learning and childcare expansion. And we do this very much in partnership with local authorities. So Perth and Kinross have nominated schools to be part of, already have been involved in the bullying thematic, and you'll see we've published last month the first of our reports around that, approaches to recording and monitoring incidents of bullying in schools, and we're currently preparing for our next phase of that thematic inspection. The curriculum design thematic is currently underway, and the field visits to schools is happening as we speak. And again, Perth and Kinross have nominated schools to be part of that process. And the early learning and childcare one is currently in development, will be happening later after Easter. And here we don't report on a local authority by local authority basis. What we do is we look at the national evidence and we pull that into a national report. As I say, that's the example of the bullying one you can see on the screen there. Okay, thank you, Magda. And that leads us into sort of partnership working. There's really two aspects of that. An important part of our inspection process is a commitment to having an associate assessor on almost all inspection teams. It's generally just in very, very small schools where there wouldn't be an associate assessor. And Perth and Kinross have got, at the moment, associate assessors who are senior leaders in early learning and childcare settings, primary and secondary schools. And they're usually serving head teachers. And in this case, in Perth and Kinross, you've also got a local authority officer and also a service manager who is one of our associate assessors. And we have just completed a round of recruitment to further extend our associate assessor list, and some successful candidates in Perth and Kinross will be getting a notification of that this week that they will be expanding our numbers. So we'll be delighted to have them on board too. And what they provide is that on the ground, current lived experience of working in a school or supporting schools in a local authority, and ensure that they provide the inspection team and inspectors with that perspective when we are in looking at schoolwork. In September of this year, I became the link inspector for Perth and Kinross, and also for Angus and Dundee, so for the Tayside local authorities. And what that means is I'm the main point of contact between the Scrutiny Directorate and these three local authorities. And I meet regularly with the senior leaders, with Sheena and with Sharon, and we look at and talk about recent inspection activity, any national reports, any concerns that they might have. So it's very much a two-way partnership, and that is very helpful in terms of developing that shared understanding of the inspection process, but equally about the work that's happening in Perth and Kinross. So although I'm relatively new to that role with Perth and Kinross, I've very much relishing it and then getting to know the local authority already. Okay, the next slide. We were very conscious also about resuming inspection, that life had been very different in schools for quite some time. So we produced an inspection advice note back in June 2022. We also conducted a series of webinars, which were very well attended, just people interested in what it's going to look and feel like. We've stressed and continue to stress the importance of context, not just because of the pandemic, but every school is different, and it's really important for us to really understand every setting that we go into. As I've mentioned before, we've removed that choice QI from the full model, and that's given us more time to have conversations about the impact of the pandemic. And for many, what we're finding is the impact on children's mental health and well-being, particularly around their resilience, is something that a lot of schools have had to address and refocus and strengthen aspects of their curriculum to support children and young people through that. We made no changes to the inspection model or to the timescales or to the frameworks that we use. And as I said before, we continue to use that self-evaluation as a starting point. We continue to be proportionate and responsive as we gather evidence. We're very conscious that we cannot see absolutely everything when we visit a school, but the importance of those planning discussions with the head teacher in advance of us arriving enables us to understand where the most important things are that they would like us to see. You know, if they're talking about things in a self-evaluation, a piece of work that they really have done a lot of work on or are developing, they'll be keen for us to see that. So we make sure that we build that into our discussions and observations while we're there. And we will continue to carry out inspection in a way that seeks to minimise the burden to staff and to keep the paperwork to a minimum. We don't want schools to be photocopying and creating lovely glossy folders for us. We will look at evidence in whatever form it currently exists. Increasingly, we are looking at things digitally. I will either sit side by side with members of staff and they'll talk us through electronic systems, or we're handed Padlets or things on a stick. So we'll look at evidence in all sorts of ways, and that way the preparation is kept to a minimum for staff. Thank you, Magda. The praise framework, as we refer to, it is really important, and we expect not just ourselves but our associate assessors to implement the PRAISE framework when we are conducting all aspects of our business. And the most important one at the moment is we're very clear about what our purpose is. We know why we're going to visit a school. It's very important that we establish positive relationships with the school very quickly. And again, that starts in advance of us even arriving. We have to be very aware of circumstances in the school, and we gather information in a whole variety of ways. We'll share information with the staff team on an ongoing basis, meeting daily with the head teacher at the end of the day, beginning of day, so they get, over the course of the inspection, they get a clear understanding of how things are going. So when we do share the findings, there should be no surprises. And we hope that we will enable staff and also the associate assessors who work in partnership with us to further their practice. Okay, next slide. We use two frameworks to inspect this, but they were designed for use by schools. These are documents that teachers will be using and school leaders will be using on a very regular basis, because this is what they use to self-evaluate their practice on. And we're just selecting 4 of the quality indicators from these frameworks, both in early learning and childcare settings and in primary and secondary schools to inspect. So again, using that familiar, it means we're talking a common language when we go into schools, and it makes it easier for schools to communicate where they feel they are on their improvement journey. Okay, next slide, thank you. And when we're in schools, there's 3 key things that we do. We want the how of what we do. We triangulate everything. We don't take one source of evidence. We will look at 3 different things particularly. We'll speak to people. We want to hear the views. We want to hear the views of children, of their parents, of partners, of staff, and we'll do that in person, but we'll also do that using our pre-inspection questionnaires. We will directly observe, so we'll observe lessons, we will take focus groups, we will look at children's works, we'll look at displays around the school, and we'll also use quantitative data. So that will be tracking of children's attainment and any other measures that they are using to support children's progress. Okay, thank you. And we evaluate against a 6-point scale. Number 6, as you see there, is excellent, and that is really the exemplifies best practice, and it's something that's shared beyond the school and is supporting system-wide improvement. It also indicates it's high levels of performance that are sustainable and will be maintained. And when you go into a school and it's tangible and excellent, you really do. It's quite something when you go into an excellent school. I've had that privilege. A very good, major strengths, few areas for improvement, and it's that high standard for provision for all children. And it's about the next steps there are about continuing to use self-evaluation to try and get to that excellent grade. And good, again, it's important strengths that have significantly positive aspect in the learner, but there's a wee bit more to do. It's about, there's some things that don't significantly diminish learners' experience in some way, but the building on those strengths to continue to improve. Thank you, Magda. Satisfactory. Strengths are just outweighing the weakness. The weaknesses are not important enough to have substantially adverse impact, but constrain the overall quality of learners' experiences. And it's about taking action on the weaknesses and by building on the strengths is where the improvement process goes there. If it's weak, they're important weakness, and it's something that needs for prompt, structured action. And the weaknesses, there may be some strengths, but either individual or collectively, they diminish learners' experiences in substantial ways. And finally, unsatisfactory, major weaknesses reminding immediate remedial action. Often you'll find schools with unsatisfactory, they need some external help. This is where local authority officers would go in, or they might use staff from another school, but usually they wouldn't be able to get improvement without additional support. Okay, thank you, Magda. There are 3 possible outcomes of inspection. So we can go in and say, yes, we're very confident in what's happening here. The school has a capacity to improve, so we don't make any more visits. Or it might be they need more time to improve. So for example, Perth Grammar was inspected in January 2020, sorry. But a report from the local authority was published in January 2023, following discussion with ourselves, and that concluded that inspection process. So we were satisfied with the progress had been made, and that concluded that process. If a school gets a weak or an unsatisfactory grade, they need more time to make necessary improvements, but we will return and carry out a further inspection. And if we do that, then we look at the points for action that were raised in the original inspection, and we will look at what progress has been made in addressing those points for action when we do return. And usually it's within 12 months, or 12 months of the publication of the report. If there are major concerns, then we might do that sooner, but generally it would be 12 months from the publication of the report. Okay, Magda? So that brings us to recent inspections here. So you've got Creeth Primary School and Nursery class. That was a full model. I had the absolute privilege of being on that inspection team, and I really enjoyed it. They're doing some lovely work there. And also St Ninian's Episcopal Primary School and Nursery class, and they had a short model. And you can see there the strengths that were coming through in these inspections, and also the areas for development. You'll notice that the grades are there too, and again, there's one we will be going back to visit St Ninian's, in particular interested in the nursery in terms of that return visit. And we've got 2 live inspections at the moment, so there's Rattray Primary and Invergowrie Primary. So those inspection reports have yet to be published because the inspections have literally just happened in the last week or 2. Okay. So that's a bit of a sort of whistle-stop tour of inspection and review. So I'm happy to take any questions if anyone would like to ask me that.
Thanks very much, Pam. That was really interesting, really useful. Thank you. Before we open it up to questions, I'm going to ask one really practical one, if that's okay. I think it would be really helpful if you're able to share that electronically with us. I think that would be great. And if you're comfortable with us then sharing that further to elected members beyond the Learning and Families Committee, I think that would also be really helpful, if that's okay in both those counts.
Yes, I've sent a PDF version of it.
Thank you very much. That's greatly appreciated. Thank you. I'll move on to broader questions. I did think that Councillor Shires was writing far too much not to have any questions, so I'll come to her first, please. The Provost's not shown up, so go for it, Caroline, with us. Apologies, Provost, I'll come to you second. I did say the last time that my chat's dodgy, so with Provost's permission, Councillor Shires, please.
Thank you very much, Convener. Thank you, Sandor. that was really interesting, and we're really grateful that you've come, because this has been something that we've been asking officers for quite a long time, just to get that context around inspection, because we were aware we were sitting on this committee and you didn't know all the detail around how it all works. So that's been really, really helpful. Thank you very much. One of my primary issues around the inspection regime is the frequency of them. We're aware of, I can think of one primary school in particular that I know of that has not been inspected by external inspectors for quite a long time, and I understand and really welcome the move to over the time I've been a councillor, change in self-evaluation has been really marked, and the quality of that self-evaluation, but there's nothing quite like having that external validation of knowing how well a school's doing, particularly from a parent point of view and from an elected member's point of view, to have that confidence of an external pair of eyes on a school. So that was really my long-winded way of asking a question about the frequency of inspections.
Thank you. One of the things that we have shared with local authorities in our planning for our inspections, the resumption of inspections this year, was that we would give increased emphasis to the length of time since the last inspection when our statisticians work out our sampling model. So we have a team who look at that national sample of schools. So we've got rural, non-rural, different sizes, local authorities, etc., etc. But one of the factors that they were taking increased look at was the, particularly this year, was the length of time since a school was last inspected. So we are very actively trying to address that. What there isn't is a inspection cycle, so to speak, that you can guarantee that your school will be inspected every set number of years, because we've got the sampling, statistical sampling approach. We are moving through a period of reform, as you may or may not be aware, in terms of that, and we're becoming a separate independent inspectorate from Education Scotland, and the process of that is moving at pace at the moment, with a view to us separating next year. And I think when we do move it into our new organisation, there will be a period where we do look at reimagining inspection and everything that entails, in very wide consultation with a very wide number of people and organisations. And I'm sure that's something that will come up at that time. But at the moment, it's that sampling approach. There's whatever formula they use. I'm glad it's not a job that I do, think. I don't envy them the task, but I can reassure you that we are taking account of the length of time and trying to make inroads into addressing that.
Thank you, Pam. Provost, thanks for your patience.
Not at all. Thank you, convener. I want to sort of touch on a topic that you just sort of mentioned a bit of where I want to come on to, in terms of the model we use for inspections, and you're talking about changes that might come, but also I think there has been quite a bit of change from when I was at school, when we had inspections about 20 years ago, and I think there is probably a greater emphasis on support now as part of the inspections. Over the weekend there was quite a lot of commentary in the press and online around an incident, a very unfortunate incident, where a teacher sadly took their own life in England after a poor Ofsted inspection. And my question is around what sort of support do Education Scotland provide to head teachers and to wider staffing groups as part of these inspections, so that they are used in a supportive way rather than a cross-examination, a way. I appreciate that obviously we all think there are standards that need to be upheld, and that it's important that the right support and the right actions are taken out of that. But obviously it's important that the staff undergoing these inspections feel supported. So I'm just sort of wanting to understand a bit more about what support is in place for head teachers and the wider staffing leadership teams, and what that might look like going forward under any new changes, because obviously I think one of the things about change is that it creates a level of uncertainty as well for staff, which can increase anxiety levels as well. So it would be very helpful if you could comment on those.
Yes, I think I'll refer back to the praise framework, which is really how we go about our business, and it's crucially important that we really are adhering to that and demonstrate that in practice when we're out in schools. The relationship that we build with head teachers even before the inspection starts is really, really important. And also, if the local authority has any concerns about a head teacher's well-being, they have an opportunity to discuss that with us in advance of the inspection if we need to be aware of any particular sensitivities, so that we can accommodate that. And that can range from a whole host of different things. You may have somebody, and I'm not talking Perth and Kinross here, I'm just talking just in general. You may have someone who's been off long-term sick, a head teacher, or is just completing a phased return, or there's a whole range of things that that might be the case. So there's that importance of relationship building. There's also the importance of awareness, and being very sensitive throughout the inspection to how the head teacher's coping and how the staff are coping with the demands of it. It is a very busy process. And if you're the leader of the school, it's particularly if you don't have a leadership team as such, it's just you, then the demands can be quite heavy. And I can recount back to I myself was a former head teacher. I know what it feels like. And before I set foot in any school building, I take myself back to being that head teacher standing on the other side of the door waiting for our visitors to arrive. So there's that personal perspective on things. And that close partnership working with the local authorities is critically important as well, because ultimately they have that, particularly that wellbeing responsibility for their staff in that school. So the quality improvement officer would generally be present, it'd be unusual if they weren't. At that initial scoping meeting, managing inspectors will be having a conversation with the quality improvement officer, and will also make sure they have means of contacting them throughout the inspection process. And if at any time they have concern, the managing inspector or any of the inspection team have concerns about the wellbeing of any member of staff, they would share that and notify the local authority representative immediately, so that they can come in and support the head teacher through that process. So there's two others. The whole approach that we take is very much a with you model. It's not we're doing it to you, and we want to involve the staff and the head teacher and leadership team as much in the planning process as possible, so that they know what's manageable. We're also very mindful of even how we structure a day. If we need to have a series of meetings, and if it's the same people that we're needing to meet, we'll make sure that there's gaps, time. I've seen me saying to head teacher, "Have you had time for a coffee yet? Come on, go and take a break and have a coffee." And we'll make sure that there's how we structure things over the course of the day is really, really important too. So to answer your question, I think there's two things. There's a praise approach, relationships, and that partnership working with local authority staff. And that's how we ensure that we can support our colleagues in schools through the process.
Thank you very much for that answer, and I think that that's a helpful approach, and hopefully if there is going to be further changes to the inspection approach in the future, that will also be further embedded. I want to sort of pick up just a bit of what you were talking about in your answer in terms of small schools, because obviously Perth and Kinross, we are a large geographical local authority, and we have a large cross-section of schools, from big secondary schools and indeed big primary schools right down to some very small rural schools, particularly in my own ward. And the inspection models that we've got, that you've talked about, the sort of the full inspection model and the shorter term inspection model, they talk about basically a full week or 2 to 3 days. But if you're going into a small school, for example, where you might have a teaching head teacher or very small numbers of staff, is that time scale reduced to take a bit of pressure off those head teachers and those staff? Because obviously there's an awful lot less to see, but also it's an awful lot, as you indicated yourself, an awful lot more pressure on those head teachers and staff if you've got inspectors with you for 5 days and you've got 1 classroom or 2 classrooms.
Yes, in fact, one of my colleagues just last week was inspecting a very small school. It was a full model, but she did it over 4 days rather than 5, and she was there on her own. So it was just the one inspector, and that way she could capture and gather evidence for a number of the different quality indicators simultaneously, and develop a really effective working relationship with the head teacher. And last week I was inspecting a 3-class school up in the Highlands, and there was 2 of us. And again, the head teacher was a teaching head, but was out of class 3 days in the week. So we didn't visit on the days where she was teaching. We planned the inspection around that, so that it was a short model, so we're only going to be there for 2 days anyway. But rather than starting on a Monday lunchtime through to a Wednesday lunchtime, we did it all day Tuesday, all day Wednesday instead. So there's a wee bit of flexibility where we can look at the practicalities of that. Sometimes the practicalities of that doesn't apply to Perth and Kinross, but at the moment I'm looking to inspect a little island that requires long ferry sails, and there's only 1 flight a week, and you know, how do you manage that? So yes, we are very flexible and take that into account, but the principle is that the general inspection model is that, but for small schools we will adjust accordingly.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks for the 2 very good questions as well, Provost. Bailey O'Hearn, I think you have a couple of questions, please.
Yes, thank you. The first question goes back to one of the very first slides, and that's the number of inspections you carry out. And it's a 2-part question dependent on the answer to the first one. You said you carry out 250 inspections a year, which equate to full primary and secondary inspections. How many of those are full inspections?
120.
Oh, that's right. I just wondered whether you had to select for the national report. So it's just you've got 120 full, and that produces your national report.
The 120, yes.
Okay, thank you. So the second one is on one of the latter slides, and that was about you mentioned 2 inspections in there, which was Perth Grammar School and St Ninians Primary. Both happen to be in my ward. And the first one was the Perth Grammar School. It took place in December 2019, with the report coming out in 2020, and then the re-inspection was done, and the report's coming out done in January 2023, of which we've got the report in front of us today. And I wonder that there's a large nearly 3 years between the first and second, and I want to know if COVID was a principal factor of that delay, and then as a result of that, how long is normally given between a a first inspection and a second inspection. And with regards to St Ninian's Primary, you mentioned in there the leadership and direction was unsatisfactory. Did you take into account the length of time the school was without the head teacher whilst the new head teacher was on maternity leave?
Okay, if I start with the St Ninian's one first, the context of any situation is very important. In fact, it's the first thing we will capture on the summary of inspection findings. So the context of that will have been taken into account, and I know that Inspection Involved did have conversations with local authority officers about that. And secondly, the normal, the most usual time span between an inspection and a return visit, or a request for a local authority report, it's usually 12 months. Sometimes it's quicker than that, depending on the nature of the concern, and because change takes time to implement, but it can vary. Undoubtedly, COVID will have had an impact, I'm sure, in the situation. Also, if the local authority report, for example, which wasn't the case here, it says actually insufficient progress has been made, then we will go back in and do another inspection. If we go back in and do a further inspection and insufficient progress has been made, then we may go back in a second time before we actually conclude, or for as long as it takes until sufficient progress has been made there. But that would be the general pattern of events.
Okay, thank you. I'll probably ask that when we get to the report later on. Thank you.
Sharon, I think you want to comment on that, don't you?
I did indeed, Convener. Thank you. It was just to provide a bit of context to that, Bailey Ahern, the two questions that you asked. In terms of the Perth Grammar School report, that is in front of us today, but the return visit, as Pam has said, that where we do a follow-up, then it recognises that schools need time to make those sustained improvements. Of course, during 2020 and 2021, we were in lockdown, so that was indeed the reason that the report was taken forward for a further year.
Thank you, Sharon, and thanks again, Pam. Last call for any questions or comments at this stage. All good. Well, once again, Pam, thank you very much for taking the time out to that was a really useful, as I say, presentation, very helpful, and thank you for answering all the questions as well. Very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. We'll move on to paper 5 now, and I think I'm delighted at this point, I should say, to have Suze Mackenzie from Crieff Primary and Fiona Robertson from the Grammar as well, but I think we're going to have a brief introduction to the paper from Sharon Johnson, please.
Thank you, Convener. I'm delighted to introduce this report. This is a report which committee are well familiar with. It just provides the key findings from all inspection activities since the committee last met on the 29th of August. It gives an overview of Education Scotland inspections carried out and published. I did note that Pam did indeed have the St Ninian's inspection report, which has been published but was not in time for our committee cycle, so that will be presented in more detail at our next committee. Just to reassure elected members that that will be coming our way. But today we are presenting the published reports that we've had since the 29th of August, and that is Crieff Primary School and Nursery, and absolutely delighted to have Suze Mackenzie, the head teacher, here with us, and also the Perth Grammar follow through, and also delighted to have Fiona Robertson, head teacher of Perth Grammar School. So what I would ask is that Jill Dugan, as the service manager for primary, take us through the context of the Crieff Primary School report, and then on to the head teachers for the details of the actions that have been taken since the report was published.
Thank you, Sharon, and welcome, Mrs. Dugan. Carry on. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so delighted to have Suze Mackenzie here and also Gillian Knox, Quality Improvement Officer for Crieff Primary School. The inspection of Crieff Primary School took place in November 2022. It was a full inspection model, so as you've just heard, that was all 4 quality indicators, and that was across the early years, the primary and the intensive support provision. Suze Mackenzie, the head teacher, had been in post since the August. I think in total it was 10 weeks before the inspection took place, and a real range of strengths were highlighted and of course next steps. So I'm just going to pass over to Gillian and to Suze to take us through the progress that they've made with those next steps to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dugan. And just before you carry on, it was remiss of me not to welcome you as well, Gillian. My apologies, and further apologies to Suze that we're not able to reciprocate the fine array of biscuits that you had when I came out to hear the presentation a couple of weeks ago. So apologies for that, Suze.
I'll actually start just now, convener,
Thank you,
just to go over the quality indicators, the evaluations for primary, and I'll also review the evaluations for the nursery class. Leadership of change in the primary stage was evaluated as very good. Learning, teaching and assessment, good. Ensuring wellbeing, equality and inclusion, good. Raising attainment and achievement, also good. The evaluations in nursery, leadership of change was good. Learning, teaching and assessment, also good. Ensuring wellbeing, equality and inclusion, good. And securing children's progress, good. And I'm going to take this opportunity to highlight a key strength mentioned by the inspection team, which was the leadership of the school, because I don't think Suze will perhaps want to emphasise that as much as I do. But now I'm going to pass to Suze, who'll be able to take us through the actions of the school and the plans that are now in place. Over to you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? So today I'm going to be talking about what we were asked to do as a result of our inspection, how are we going to do that, and also what our strengths as highlighted. So what were we asked to do? We were asked to ensure that our teachers needed to understand better where children are in their learning and what they needed to do to improve. So as a school, we have been developing our approaches to moderation here to help ensure teachers' professional judgments and children's progress in learning are more accurate and robust. We have a whole school attainment calendar now being implemented and really working with our staff to highlight the moderation hub and perhaps further use of that. We were also asked to improve the way teachers plan learning and to ensure all children are making progress. Children needed well-paced learning experiences that were matched carefully to their interests and their needs. Now, as part of our planning, needed to take greater account of the different levels of pace and challenge required to meet all our children's needs effectively. We are currently engaging in research that will support the new planning procedures and formats that are going to be introduced. That process ensures that we have a curriculum pathways in place and that our pupils are at the centre, their voice is very much at the centre of that planning process. Teachers also needed to improve their confidence and accuracy of their professional judgments about the children's progress and attainment. We're working to enhance our tracking meetings procedures to ensure this focus on strengths and the potential barriers to learning. This included a little bit of a better use to our data of all curriculum areas to inform that planning, and that included our PEF planning. We're embedding a newly created additional support needs audit, and this shall enhance, we have every faith, as time progresses. I'd now like to take you through how we're going to do that, how we're going to move from a good to a very good, and about the roles and responsibilities in that. As a SLT senior leadership team, we are wanting to continue to ensure our support staff have understanding of moderation, and by that, by embedding our audit and ensuring interpretation of that whole school data by supporting our staff through that. We're continuing to introduce the new planning tools, ensuring that the pupil voice, as I've said, is at the centre and that the pupils are familiar with their data story.
Within the early learning level, we're continuing to link that learning between nursery and primary 1, exploring further approaches to ensure continuity and progression of learning between those 2 stages. We're very fortunate to have both on campus and to use the play-based curriculum within that. We also were highlighted, as you'll hear in a moment, about our inclusive practices across the school, but we want to enhance that even further. And so we are taking part in a study at the moment to introduce inclusion ambassadors across the school. This is part of a regional collaborative study. And then the inclusion ambassadors will be pupils, and they will raise the awareness of inclusion and the barriers faced by children. And so that's a really exciting initiative that we're part of at the moment. We also, part of our inspection was to ensure that we've been informing all our stakeholders of the planning and involved, very much throughout the part of the school's story. I have a new parent council that has been created at the same time as our new leadership team. So this has really started off beautifully together. And so we've started the discussions there about how we can do that and how we can get people through the door to make sure their voices are heard in shaping our school. The expectations of all, I have a fantastic team, but it'll be for that team to continue to work and to be continuing to be as welcoming and engaging to all our stakeholders and partners across the school, and also for us to continue to engage with professional inquiry, because we feel that that is very important, which informs our next steps. I want to touch on now the strengths that were highlighted with the inspection. The direction of the work of the leadership within our school has been mentioned, and we were very grateful of that as a new leadership team. It was created and mentioned across the school, the nursery and the intensive support provision. This teamwork ensured that we were able to take part in small tests of change. One of those which were highlighted was our involvement in the National Improvement Collaborative, focusing on writing. Another nurturing practices with a very strong focus on emotional well-being across the school, nursery and intensive support provision. This work is supporting all our children to feel cared for and ready to learn, and we used the Education Scotland Glasgow Wellbeing Tool, which was in place now this is our 2nd year, and this was highlighted through in the inspection. An engagement with a wide range of partners was also highlighted. We have a great many, and we're very proud that the partners are very much part of our everyday school. And finally, I want to touch on our safeguarding. Safeguarding for us is the centre of everything we do. Pam has mentioned earlier that the children are at the heart of everything we do, and therefore our safeguarding we were delighted to know that this was one of our strengths, and that engaging with our community and knowing our community well meant that they were in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suzanne, Gillian, much appreciated. Are there any questions or comments from elected members at this point? Provost.
Thanks, convener. Not a question, just a comment, and in fact, Councillor Barrett has a question, so I'm happy for her to go first.
Thanks, Provost. Councillor Barrett.
It was just to say thank you for this excellent report, excellent progress, and I would just wondered what was being done to share the Crieff Primary School approach with senior leadership in other schools. Thanks.
Yes, there's lots of good practice that's been highlighted through this report. So as a head teacher group, we work collaboratively in a range of ways through partnerships and sharing practice, and that will be done on a regular basis as we progress beyond this report.
Thank you, Mrs. Duggan. Councillor Shires.
Been very careful to frame this as a question, not a comment. Thank you very much, and it's really encouraging to hear. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to the public meeting, which I hear went very well. My question sort of linked really, but you referred to children's, I think, their data journey. Was that the expression? And then also within the reports about the confidence and accuracy of professional judgment of teachers, and they're almost kind of linked, is that everybody knows, you know, what they're good at, where they're going, how they're improving. But just to get a bit more information about that would look like for a child of their data journey. I imagine some big spreadsheet laid out for them, and what work's been done to improve teachers' confidence. And I think teachers have been through such a lot over the last few years, having to change, a lot of the way that they taught, and that I imagine it's been a bit of a challenge.
I think that within the CREEF context, the National Writing Improvement Collaborative has taught us a great deal, and it's presented us with a variety of tools and ways in which we can share the children's data with them in a very friendly and user-friendly way. The pupils, I have to say, have taken that on tenfold. They have loved their data story, and we've seen improvement in the specific area of writing straight away because of that. So therefore, I would like to, with my team, roll out similar methods across the school. That in turn has also supported the teacher's professional judgment by taking part in this study, as well as when we're linking it with our moderation practices and working with other schools, improving our tracking and attainment information so that we're really making sure that quality of discussion and professional dialogue is in place. So does that help answer? Thank you.
It does. Sometimes you hear these things, you think, oh, I'd really like to see what that looked like. Just out of interest, so maybe we'll have to make a wee field trip up to CREEF Primary School to have a look. Thank you.
Thanks, Suze. Provost, thanks again for your patience.
No, thank you, convener. No, I just wanted to really comment and commend the staff, in particular the head teacher, to have a leadership of change valued at very good after 10 weeks in post is a significant achievement, really, and one that reflects very well on the school and indeed on yourself personally as well. So I just really wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I just want to echo exactly what you've said. I genuinely really enjoyed the presentation when I was up a couple of weeks ago, and it was quite hard bar. It was the day after the budget. There was no truth in the rumour I had a mild hangover, but supposing that was true, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. What was clear was I think it was clear that you had an engagement from the parent cohort as well, who weren't shy in asking some important and probing questions, which is, I'm sure, to be welcomed as well. I think the emphasis on inclusion and well-being was clear to say also, so I genuinely thoroughly enjoyed the presentation. And just to echo what everybody else says about the good work, I think we all, as elected members, really appreciate it. So thank you very much for coming along today as well. Thank you. David, are you introducing the grammar bit?
Yes, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. In November 2019, Education Scotland undertook a short model inspection of Perth Grammar School. The evaluations returned from that short model inspection were satisfactory for learning, teaching and assessment, and weak for raising attainment and achievement. The school were fully supported to create and implement a detailed action plan over the ensuing period, and Education Scotland then carried out a follow-up visit in December 2021. It was reported that school staff had been successful in addressing the original recommendations, but that due to the pandemic, the school required more time to fully implement those priorities for improvement that had been identified back in November 2019. So PKC, as I say, were asked to further report on that progress and did so in December 2022. This report, which is detailed in the papers in front of elected members, was fully accepted by Education Scotland. And I will now pass over to Fiona Robertson, the head teacher of Perth Grammar School, and she'll report on the significant progress and a bit more detail that she and her team have made since that time.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, committee. I have to say it's really nice to actually be here in person, because each time I've been so far, it's always been online. So, yeah, so really very much I'll contextualise the report that's been published. So the school's values remain key drivers of change at Perth Grammar School and feature consistently in policy and procedures, including the shared understanding that we now have of our high quality learning and teaching. Staff very much now are halfway through their strategies to pedagogy programme that we have developed as a school. And that recent focus has been on specific strategies, and those are clarifying understanding, sharing learning intentions, effective classroom discussions and activities that elicit learning. So those are the areas of focus. Staff have evidenced these approaches which learners are benefiting from by means of consistent standard to support the progress, and staff have embarked on the third strategy just now, providing effective feedback for young people. Effective systems are now embedded to monitor attainment data for all of our young people. As a result, senior leaders effectively identify gaps in attainment and put in timely interventions to support learners. All staff easily access a wide range of key information about learners, and this has increased their ability and confidence in the use of data to improve attainment. Significant progress has been made across a range of attainment measures and key performance indicators, with the school now in line or indeed exceeding our virtual comparator schools in most measures. Senior leaders are committed to continual improvement and have identified key areas requiring specific focus with well-structured interventions planned to address these. Continual progress has been made by all faculties in terms of developing assessment approaches. This is most apparent in the senior phase and is evidenced through the high number of successful appeals that were achieved this year. Progress is also continuing in the broad general education assessment planning. However, this continues to be an area of ongoing focus. And to date, moderation is a more regular feature during collegiate time. A significant amount of work that's been undertaken to use learner-friendly descriptors, those descriptors being emerging, enhancing and extending. These support learners to take greater responsibility for their own individual progress. A calendar programme of literacy and numeracy moderation activities continues and supports our teachers in developing their understanding of progress within and achievement of a level. The Attainment Board regularly meet to review the performance of our young people, and that's providing senior leaders and staff with a clearer overview of the progress that is being made and allows for targeted intervention work to take place as well when required. So across curricular areas, literacy ambassadors have also supported faculties to identify evidence-informed whole school focus on learning and on listening and talking, and that's been key to development and progress for us there. Senior leaders have planned and monitored the impact of the allocation of pupil equity funding to support the young people with attendance and attainment, and the embedded staffing structure and improved systems are focused on increasing attendance rates for all of our learners. Literacy and numeracy interventions continue to improve reading age and demonstrate assessment progress, and I'm particularly impressed by our outreach programme, which supports many of our lowest 20% of learners to re-engage with education and improve attainment. That's been a huge success for us. To improve consistency, all staff have engaged in several collaborative developments. These are focused on building staff confidence and consistent approaches to planning and learning, and the key elements in creating a solid, very sound foundation that fosters learner conversations and what helps them move forward with their own learning. The first of these involves staff working collaboratively with colleagues across the local authority to align the progress levels, so going back to that emerging, enhancing and extending against their curricular benchmarks. And additionally, our PGS strategies for pedagogy and equity has built staff confidence and improved consistency in creating credible criteria that supports learner feedback. Our whole school moderation events have improved staff consistency with regards to learner feedback relating to literacy and numeracy. And engagement with our skills builder, so this is a module that's by Skills Development Scotland, has raised awareness and supported staff to construct and deliver meaningful learner conversations around skills development. People Voice has informed our restructured tutor time classes, which in turn have improved the teacher and pupil relationships, which are absolutely key to us, and our young people always say that that's a key strength of the school, as acknowledged during our term 2 visit. Article 12, which is our People Voice vehicle, in terms of our young people being able to have their voice in their learning, is the main vehicle for that. And there's more regular opportunities for faculties as well to seek the views of our young people, including surveys and lesson feedback. And by doing so, the leadership team have focused on specific aspects of learning and practice, setting consistent expectations for learners and staff. In classrooms, there was an increased emphasis on gathering pupil feedback, for example, using Microsoft Forms, or from more regular learning conversations that have taken place. Principal teachers are now responding better to the needs identified from attainment reviews to best inform the curricular offer and to involve learners more ones like than specific aspects of the addition of the we said we did boards across the school to capture and reflect that pupil voice, and so that's on display across the school. A feature that had also progressed further since the last visit from Education Scotland is a new system in place to celebrate and recognise success through the ability of staff to send positive messages home. Furthermore, the introduction of Strive Awards as part of the school's ambition agenda enables termly recognition of pride, respect and ambition. And many of the positive responses that have been received from parents have stemmed from that particular initiative. The house system is more prominent and provides another means for the learning community to demonstrate achievement, and that's been well supported by our parent council. And most young people are actively engaged in their learning, and lesson visits have become a regular feature for faculties to supplement whole school monitoring activity. Clearer explanations of key learning points have been established, and the use of technology is apparent, including the addition of Promethean boards most recently to classrooms. And as a result of the professional learning undertaken by all staff in relation to learning and teaching, good practice and appropriate interventions are evident in almost all subject areas. The school is well placed to continue that trend, as further exemplified in a recent validated self-evaluation visit that took place in term 3. There is confidence in the school's ability to maintain this improvement momentum. In preparation of this further information, local authority officers visited the school on several occasions to sample learning and reflective of what David has said and shared, and to look at the teaching and to support and challenge raising attainment and achievement. Perth Grammar has made significant improvements in these areas since the original inspection of November 2019, and we'll obviously continue to monitor that through local quality assurance processes in partnership too. It's therefore very welcome and positive news today for Perth Grammar to have been signed off by Education Scotland, and as head teacher I'm confident that our school team are very well placed to continue the improvement journey. So to finish in the words of our school motto, with pride we respect, with ambition we strive. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Any questions or comments for Fiona? David, please. Bailey Hearn. Thank you.
Thank you. If you're happy with the comment before, unless there's any questions.
Just go for it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Fiona, for that. Perth Grammar School, not only is it in my ward, but all 3 of my children went through Perth Grammar. So I have a great affinity with the school. And I've worked for a number of years now since becoming a counsellor with Fiona and the senior team there. I'm delighted to see the improvement made by not only Fiona and the staff, but the pupils as well. The senior pupil leadership team have done some excellent work to improve the school. Not more so in the house system, and they've worked alongside the parent council in making that more visible. And I think that is, as Fiona mentioned, the strength in the school and the competition in amongst the house system. The outreach programme that Fiona mentioned is excellent. I have been along and seen some of the work it's done there. That is working with some of the most challenging pupils in the area that are completely disengaged with the education system. And I've seen them in that small environment in North Newton, in the community centre there. And it really is working, and they are starting to get back engaged again. But I just generally want to say well done to Fiona, the staff, and everyone else at Perth Grammar School in the improvement. I was very disappointed in 2020 when I seen the report. As I said, all 3 of my children went through there, and to see that report of the school then, but to see the massive improvement that's been done, and they did have a very difficult time with the 2 years of COVID, but I think they strove forward and they worked really well through the COVID situation. But since that, and since the pupils went back again, to get to this now, where they no longer have to be reported on by Education Scotland, is a fantastic achievement. And well done, Fiona, and please give my thanks to all the staff at the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey Hearn. Thank you. Councillor Shires.
I've got a couple of questions. Was it right? Yeah, thank you very much, Fiona. That was excellent. I actually found the format of the report really easy to follow as well, just for it's not one that we see very often, and it was really easy to follow. I was really interested in the bit in the report where it talks about the role of the additional pupil care and welfare officer and the impact that they'd had and on attendance and punctuality. I was also interested, and I don't know if there's figures that we can have maybe after the meeting about attendance, because I know that had been a challenge that you'd been trying to address pre-COVID. I guess COVID, we know nationally, has had an impact, and so I'm quite interested in a wee bit more information around that. And my other question, David, was for yourself, and which was about the learnings from all of this and how they've been shared with other secondary schools, and particularly those that have not had inspections, so they're just going through the self evaluation processes, etc., and how, you know, the good work that's been done here has been progressed through the rest of the schools. And to echo Chris's comments, you know, it's really encouraging. I can't, you know, imagine that, you know, you had the inspection straight into, you know, lockdowns and all the rest, and I know you had big staff turnover in the school also, which, you know, just a perfect storm of stuff going on. So it is really encouraging to have this in front of us. And my final question, convener, was about communication and engagement with parents, which I know was something that was really important and needed to be addressed. So any information around that? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Shires, I'll take my the first two, the PCWO and the part about parents, if that's okay. So yeah, so the role of the people care and welfare officers really fundamentally is to do exactly that, the impact of the attendance and the punctuality element. What's potentially difficult to do is exactly what you've highlighted in terms of the change in feast and the goalposts, so to speak, in terms of the context that we've seen during the pandemic and the impact that we've had through that time. So the momentum and the change of that has been key, because we've seen our young people in some cases a bit harder to reach out to, depending on circumstances, and to get them back into the whole schoolwork. But what I have to say is, and it was key what I said at the last committee, was about how successful Perth Grammar was during the pandemic itself, and how we were able to respond, and how I felt that we did reflect exactly what was going to work for our young people, and that was very well received, actually, linking that, you know, from the parent perspective too. Our parent body were very, very supportive in terms of how we actually handled that period. So moving forward, our PCWOs work, they're aligned with the house system itself, which is particularly good, so our young people know exactly who to go to and who's there, and they would be supporting with it can be absolutely, in effect, anything in terms of care and welfare, including uniform and so on too. And that's really very much their role in doing that, and I'll happily obviously take a look at that and either provide further information on that. Alongside that though, in terms of our parents and the communication around that, again, I think the key, the best parental engagement we've actually seen has been during the pandemic and since, and that's again thanks to, I think, really quite innovative ideas and a different take on what you'll be aware that police officers, for example, do coffee with the cop, and it was just by chance one of our local officers once suggested to me, why don't you do tea with the head teacher, and therein lies a very lasting experience that we have had, and we've been able to then amend that to include either tea with the principal teacher, you can see the trend, and so to keep, and so I've then been able to use that just to even extend on, for example, Scottish Government consultations recently I've been able to offer alongside the Let's Talk Scottish Education was the last one I held, but then there's been other things as well. We've been able to obviously use technology to our advantage from a parent engagement and communication perspective, and I think the other key thing that we have seen is going back to that positive element of recognising the praise and celebrating success aspect through our Strive Awards as part of the ambition agenda within the school, and that's been very successful too. So I think there's definitely sort of two key areas I would say that we've got the direct, sort of direction that we've been able to go in terms of that engagement as well. So that's really positive, and we'll obviously continue to try and build on that moving forwards.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Councillor Shires. Provost.
Thanks very much, convener.
Sorry, David, I think you were going to answer. Sorry, Provost. Your patience is going to be required a third time today. My apologies. I think you were going to say something about.
I was poised for action, but I won't be too long. So in terms of lessons and taking them across the whole system, Councillor, I suppose, you know, what the school has done is they've taken a rich data picture and they've been able to really apply that to young people to ensure that not only are they coursed really effectively in the first place to get the best possible attainment, but the tracking and monitoring systems in place to ensure that attainment all the way through. And obviously central officers are part of that story throughout, but our networks, our head teacher network, where we meet with them collegiately, our deputy head teacher network and our principal teacher network, which we call our subject network, are places where that work all happens to ensure that the lessons learned from the data that exists, if you like, and the access we all have to it, are carried through to improvement for every young person. It's that forensic attention to detail that makes a difference in the marginal gains. And then the second thing I would say would be that one of the real keys for success through the learning and teaching strategy at the school, the PGS5, has been getting the voice of everybody on the table about what makes successful learning. And the time and care and attention that we've spent to that has been probably really fundamental to the improvement that they've developed, and that's part of our improvement agenda as we move into the next session and out the end of this session as well.
Thank you, David. Provost.
Thank you very much, convener, and thank you very much for coming to committee. It's been a long time since I was actually involved with Perth Grammar, but actually it was my first, I think, set of interviews as an elected member about a couple of weeks into being an elected member 6 years ago, and so I got to know the school a wee bit at that point, and I think it's really positive, the development journey that you've come on that is before us today. And I think I just want to reflect on very much the remarks that Baillie Ahern and indeed Councillor Shires have already remarked on, that you possibly got the worst possible set of timings for this, and I know a lot about bad timings. I took over a hotel just before COVID as well, so I appreciate the challenges of trying to achieve different things at the same time. So trying to adapt some of what you're trying to achieve here, that you probably had already set out in plans to adapt and change, and then having to make changes to adapt again during COVID to achieve it in that context. So I think that's actually a really remarkable level of resilience, and I think that's something that the whole of your team and yourself should be commended for, because it is a very challenging set of circumstances anyway, but to have that on top of that and try and make those adjustments, and have further up inspections and stuff when there was restrictions, etc. in place, trying to constantly adapt in all of those circumstances is quite a significant challenge and achievement to have achieved it. So well done to yourself and your team.
Thank you, Provost. Councillor Barrett, please.
Thank you, convener. Is there an echo? No, it's okay. I just wanted to add my congratulations on this achievement, and thanks to Fiona for coming to us today and explaining some of how they went about it. Also, thanks to everyone who helped with this success, and I just want to wish you all the very best going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. I just want to add very briefly, because it's all been said, that the timing of it couldn't have been worse, and I think to achieve what for you and your team to have achieved what you've achieved in terms of improvement would have been impressive enough had it not been done through COVID, and it was. So very impressive, if that's not patronising. And I think if the singers that sang at the prize giving and the musicians I've seen playing at the concert hall or anything to go by, then the school's in a pretty good place. So I just want to add my congratulations to that as well. And thank you very much for coming along today, and to David for your input as well. Thank you very much. I think that's us finished today. So thank Shannon's shaking her head at me, but we're not finished.
That's it. Convener, I'm very happy for us to conclude today, but there was just the small matter of the care inspectorate inspections. I don't know if you would like me to.
Yeah, no, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, that was remiss of me to forget about that as well.
It's okay.
Carry on. Thank you very much.
but that is the conclusion of the Education Scotland inspections that we had for committee today. We do have 19 inspections that have taken place by the Care Inspectorate since August the 29th of this year, and only one is being presented this afternoon as an exception. That's one of our partner providers, the Daisy Chain Nursery, and that's here because it has a weak grading. There are certain circumstances which pertain to that, but you will see that there was an evaluation of unsatisfactory, a weak grading in May 22, and there have been 2 further follow-through inspections. So Bernadette Scott is here to talk that through, and just to give you a bit of an undertaking about what has happened since then in relation to this this nursery.
Thank you, Sharon, and apologies for forgetting about you as well here, Ben. So carry on. Thank you.
Thank you. Daisy Chain came into partnership with Perth and Kinross Council in October 2021. And they did so on what we call a probationary contract because they're a brand new set up. And I think it's important to note that when you're a brand new setting just starting out, it's a real challenge to meet the national standard quickly. And I think the picture of reports in front of you today back that up really quite strongly. And not to undermine the journey that they've been on, they did receive an unsatisfactory and then a further week. And in those circumstances, the early years team work with the setting on an improvement plan, quite a detailed improvement plan. So they have been making progress in the right way, but we continue to work with them. So they had their initial inspection in May 2022. They had a follow-up inspection in September 2022 and a further inspection in January 2023. And although there are no grades for that third inspection, I hope that you will have noticed the real progress that's been made and that all of the recommendations have actually now been met. And within that third report, it highlights the progress that has been made around about a culture of self-evaluation that's being developed now, that quality assurance processes are being implemented, and as a result of that, children are now experiencing much higher quality provision, and that the management team there have got clear and effective plans in place to improve the practice. Personal planning for the children has been updated and staff are now working to really know the children very well and meet their needs. And the indoor and the outdoor environment has been improved significantly to the satisfaction of the Care Inspectorate. The Care Inspectorate advised that they will return around about April 2023, and we will continue to work with that setting on an improvement plan. We do have the facility to move on to a support plan, but we feel it's important that we continue to work with them on an improvement plan basis, and we will do that until they receive the grades of good or better around about April this year.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions or comments in regards to that from elected members? Councillor Barrett, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. That's reassuring because there certainly were concerning points coming out of it in September 22, and it's good to know that, well, to have read through the rest of the report and see the progress being made on these. My question is that I know that ELC providers and schools in Perth and Kinross are expected to meet good on all QIs, but I noticed later on in the report that several of the partner providers are only meeting the adequate standard. And we've reviewed the detail on that for Daisy Chain. I just wondered if there are plans to raise the standards of other providers as well, since it does seem to be a bit of an area of weakness.
Ben?
Yes, Councillor Barrett. So the description that I gave of how we work with Daisy Chain is actually the very same for all of the other settings who do not meet the grade of good or better. So depending on our level of confidence, we have partners that are on improvement plans with very robust and tight timescales around about that. And where we've worked through that for some time, we then can also move on to a support plan. It would be unusual for a partner to have a grading of less than good and us not have any plan in place. That would not happen. So almost all of those settings are on improvement plans, but some are on support plans due to the level of confidence that we now have in their ability to gain a good or better at the next inspection.
Thank you, Ben. Are you okay with that, Councillor Barrett?
I am, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Provost, do you have a? No, sorry, Provost. Anyway, I would just like to say it was remiss of me to forget about you there, because the daisy chain is in my ward actually, and I really appreciate the engagements that you and I have had previously on it. It's reassuring to hear what you have to say, and indeed I've had a couple of parents come to me very recently to say that they do notice improvement. So thank you very much for that. It's appreciated. I think just if I don't want to go off too much on a tangent, but I know it was really interesting to hear Pam's presentation earlier. I know that both in terms of the Care Inspectorate and Education Scotland, when you get a good, it means it's good. The bar is quite high, and I think it would be a little bit remiss just to finish today, even though I tried to do that 20 minutes ago. It would be a little bit remiss to finish today without bringing up Northmead and Balhousie initially a little bit, because they actually did get an excellent in their report, which is almost unheard of. So we're in a good place, I think, broadly speaking. But thank you very much for that anyway, Ben, much appreciated. And I think Councillor Barrett, you have a comment before we finish, I think.
Yes, just a final comment, just to draw attention to 6.1 in the paper and the excellent comparisons that we've got against comparator authorities and nationally. So thanks very much to everybody who's involved in that.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett, much appreciated. I think this time we are finished, so thank you everybody for attending today. That was really good, I thought, so thank you very much.